Manchester in 2019 when I was still a Labour MP, but I was chased out of the Labour Party because of my criticism of Israel and my support for the Palestinian people. But at that point in time I was a suspended Labour MP and eventually left the party, but at that point in time there was still hope that we could elect a party led by Jeremy Corbyn that would bring about a transformation of Britain, a transformation both in terms of domestic policy but also in terms of foreign policy as well, in particular in relation to the Zionist entity. But those hopes were dashed, as we know, and in large measure the reason why they were dashed is that the Corbyn project was sabotaged by the Zionist lobby in this country. And, you know, so many people were hoping for change when we were looking to elect a Labour government, a government that we hope would eradicate poverty in this country. And I was walking down to the square today from Manchester Piccadilly, and just remember, we're living in the 6th biggest economy in the world, and there are people sleeping in shop doorways in Manchester, people begging on the streets in the 6th biggest economy in the world. What an absolute disgrace! And it is a political choice, because we have a government that issues its own currency, so it can never run out of money. So it's a choice to leave people sleeping on the street. It's a choice to leave 14.5 million people in the 6th biggest economy in the world living in poverty. Precarious employment is now endemic throughout the land. I see Ron Senchek is in the audience here, was a fantastic print workers organiser in Derby, the city that I am from. And when Ron and I were growing up, we knew that when we left school and when we looked for a job, that there would be no problem in getting a job, and we knew that we would have a better standard of living than our parents did. That is no longer the case, and that is a political choice, and that's what we need to fight against. But you know, democracy, politics in this country has let us down. I'm now the Deputy Leader of the Workers' Party, but Parliament is now stuffed full of the uni-party. There is no difference between Labour and the Conservatives. What did we see the government doing only a few weeks ago? They've maintained the cap on child benefit, limiting it to just 2 children. They've also decided to take away the cold weather payments for pensioners in this country. In the 6th biggest economy in the world, let's remember, because apparently we don't have the money, but we know that's not true for the reasons I've already outlined. But Sir Keir Starmer does have the money to provide £3 billion for as long as it takes, he says, every single year to sustain and maintain NATO's proxy war in Ukraine. Absolutely outrageous. These people are directly taking us to the precipice of World War III. They're sociopaths, they're maniacs, and we have to fight against them. And of course I know why most people who have come here today are concerned, as most of the world is, about what's happening in Gaza. And Sir Keir Starmer, the British government, are continuing to provide arms to Israel to perpetrate a genocide on the Palestinian people. How outrageous is it that they're doing that? And just think back, just over 60 years now, to when President Kennedy was assassinated. And I think it was assassinated in large measure because of this particular speech, and I want to read a brief extract from it. He said, he was talking about not merely peace for Americans, but peace for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, but peace for all time. I speak of peace, therefore, as a necessary, rational, or end of rational men. Well, rational men and women are not part of the political class anymore. And that's why we have to take the struggle onto the street. Because neoliberalism and Zionism are a cancer. And what do we do with cancer? We cut it out. And that's what we have to do with Zionism, which is a racist, settler, colonial ideology. It is the most appalling form of racist ideology in the world today. And that's why we have to fight against it, and fight against the political class who are totally out of touch with the people of this country, with the people of the world, who are unanimously in support of justice for the Palestinian people. And we shouldn't just simply be calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. That's a minimum that's required. We want to see an arms embargo, but we want to go further than that. We want to see a complete trade embargo against Israel, don't we? We want to exclude Israel from all forms of civilized sporting and cultural activities. Can you imagine Nazi Germany being allowed to participate in the Eurovision Song Contest, for example? Israel was in it, they're not even in bloody Europe. How disgraceful. So I think there's four things that we need to be supporting. Direct action, we've already heard about Palestine Action. It's really important that we support Palestine Action because the state is ramping up the pressure against Palestine Action, but direct action against the likes of Elbit is absolutely essential. We also need to engage in an information war to expose Zionism. Do not be afraid. We need to speak out. The people are with you. And we have to be brave and we have to speak out. We also need to be exposing the charities that are getting tax advantages, Zionist charities in this country, raising money for the Israeli occupation forces soldiers. How appalling is that? And we also need to be calling for the arrest of these extremists when they return to Britain. Because what's happening is that British citizens are going out participating in the genocide as part of the Israeli occupation forces, and then coming back to this country as if nothing has happened, and they're being welcomed with open arms. That is outrageous. We need to call it out, and we need to put a stop to it as soon as we possibly can. But let me just finish with a quote from Martin Luther King, and although it may feel really difficult, really depressing, tragic, what we're seeing at the moment, both in this country, but particularly what's happening in Gaza right now. But Martin Luther King said, the arc of the moral universe is wrong, but in the end, it bends towards justice. And that's what we need to continue to fight for. Justice for the Palestinian people, justice for the working class in this country, and justice